Welcome to this week's Movie Math, where it was one heck of a close call for Captain America. The super soldier was almost taken down by a species just as rare, the blue macaw. And interestingly, both of their sequels feature these boys in blue learning they're not as rare as they once thought. But this is serious. Has Hydra also infiltrated Blue Sky Studios? Thankfully, their plot was foiled, yet the fact that they almost succeeded is troubling news indeed. I mean, Rio 2 actually bested the Winter Soldier on Friday, as in made more money. When Captain America debuted stateside a week ago, the story taking shape was that it was on track to post Iron Man numbers, which would finally free Marvel Studios from putting all their eggs in the hands of Robert Downey Jr. And live-action Tony Stark has even been cool about the whole thing, celebrating his 49th birthday, which just happened to be Cap's domestic release date of April 4th, by hosting a private screening of the sequel for himself and a slew of kids. And he posted a pic on Facebook. Ah, those were heady days. But now reality has begun to creep in as Captain America the Winter Soldier is actually performing on par with Thor the Dark World. So much for Cap being not just a better film, but an actually really good film. Regardless of Marvel Studios' takeaway from that, one thing for sure is that Batman vs. Superman ain't moving. Man of Steel might have dropped 65% in its second weekend to number 3, but 2 weeks in it was $50 million ahead of where Winter Soldier stands now, and it did outgross Thor the Dark World last year. Sure, Captain America the Winter Soldier will likely outgross Thor the Dark World as well, and maybe even Man of Steel. But with Batman and Wonder Woman being added to the mix, and this film potentially feeding directly into a Justice League movie, well, I guess May 6, 2016 is going to become a battle of the secondary characters. Who should Marvel Studios add to Cap 3's roster to effectively compete? So, what went wrong? Hollywood guesses that perhaps the sequel was too front-loaded, with everyone rushing to see it opening weekend thanks to the immense hype. Perhaps some opening day competition would have actually benefited the flick after all. The other culprit? Really nice weather. Come on, Hollywood. Nice weather doesn't keep people from going to the movies, at least movies they genuinely want to see. Otherwise, summer would not be your biggest movie season. As for Rio 2, unfortunately, its sole claim to fame is literally giving Captain America the Winter Soldier a run for its money. And in fact, it did take the weekend overseas. But otherwise, the sequel was another disappointment for Blue Sky Studios. It opened on par with flicks like Mr. Peabody and Sherman, Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs 2, and the last entry from Blue Sky Studios, Epic. That makes it a solid mid-range franchise, bigger than the likes of Planes and Turbo, but dwarfed by Juggernaut's The Lego Movie, Frozen, Despicable Me 2, and Monsters University. Now, most studios have an assortment of films, but can Blue Sky Studios survive on mid-range picks alone? One has to wonder how Fox feels, considering they now have distribution deals with 2 animation studios, Blue Sky and DreamWorks. If that 2015 Peanuts movie only grosses peanuts, I imagine Blue Sky is going to start feeling an awful lot like their mascot, Scrat. Meanwhile, Jason Blum might not make a lot of headlines, a la, say, fellow producer Jerry Bruckheimer, but he continues to quietly build his empire. With just a $5 million price tag, Oculus still managed to claw its way to the number 3 spot, on par with the first Insidious. Blum and James Wan were able to spin Insidious into a boffo franchise, and now, with Wan moving on to bigger pastures, perhaps Blum can really sink his teeth into new blood Mike Flanagan. This is also a nice little treat for Marvel Studios, as it gives Karen Gillan wider exposure on the eve of her debut as Nebula in Guardians of the Galaxy. Draft Day, on the other hand, cost 5 times as much, yet debuted with a quarter less. This is Kevin Costner's lowest debut yet for what's been a dismal year on the big screen. Perhaps his agents should start taking a hard look at how to return him to his former small screen glory. As for the rest of the box office, Rio 2 gutted Muppets Most Wanted and Mr. Peabody and Sherman, which both fell around 65%. It seems unlikely the $50 million Muppet sequel will be able to just break even, and the same goes for $145 million Peabody. Even with foreign box office, neither is close to doubling those budgets, which would be necessary for Disney and DreamWorks Fox to recoup their costs, not including advertising. However, Noah is at least on the verge of breaking even thanks to a foreign haul that's double its domestic. And also thanks to foreign box office, the Grand Budapest Hotel crossed the century mark, the first Wes Anderson movie ever to do so. It's also worth noting that the announcement of Allegiant being broken up into 2 films didn't do much to help current entry Divergent, which slipped another 40% in its 4th weekend. Then again, Shailene Woodley isn't doing the Summit publicity department any favors, as over the weekend the big headline was that designers won't lend her gowns for the red carpet anymore because she sends them back reeking of body odor. Finally, The Raid 2 added almost 1,000 theaters and almost made it into the top 10. That's more theaters than the first Raid ever made it to. Now let's see if the sequel can top the original film's $4 million haul. Tell your friends to see The Raid 2. Or maybe you should have them see Captain America 2. What movie are you going to help via word of mouth during the April doldrums? As for this coming weekend, a slew of competitors enter the box office arena for the holiday weekend. Only Heaven is for Real seems to be Easter specific, yet Johnny Depp is expected to have a much needed win with Transcendence. Will a man in a machine defeat Cap after all? And that's the weekend box office. I'm Grace Randolph and we just did some movie math. As always, thanks for watching. And I hope you'll go beyond the trailer for these other top movies.